take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Hey, happy Festivus, everyone.
And a happy Festivus to you. Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Friday, December 23rd, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the program. I'm Radical Russ, coming to you live and direct from beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, where we are hanging out in Delta 9 Studios. And like the rest of the internet, we are saddened and hopeful at the same time upon the latest breaking news. If you haven't heard yet, check your Twitter or Facebook feed. Carrie Fisher, the actress who played Princess Leia in the Star Wars movies, and near and dear to my heart, Jake's girlfriend in the Blues Brothers, had a heart attack, a massive heart attack on a flight from London to L.A., and she was unresponsive on the plane. EMTs doing CPR, reports that she wasn't breathing for up to 10 minutes. She's in critical condition, we hear, according to at least the Twitter reports and something I've seen off of TMZ and a couple of other outlets, in critical condition, and thoughts, well wishes, prayers going out. I saw one tweet that mentioned that Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, survived a car crash he never should have survived. Harrison Ford, who played Han Solo, survived a plane crash he never should have survived. So, universe, it is Carrie Fisher's turn. And damn it, 2016, we are not going to let you take Carrie Fisher in the same year you took Bowie and Prince and so many other beloved folks. I put a list out on my Facebook page of all the well-known celebrities and musicians who died earlier than the age of 75 just this year, and it was far too long a list. So we hope for the best for Carrie Fisher. Now, coming up on today's show, all sorts of news to get to, some good news coming out of our court system, and we're going to kind of take a look at college today. First of all, in reference to the courts, our guest is Dan Viets. He's with Missouri Normal. He's on the Normal National Board, Normal Legal Committee, works with Show Me Cannabis, has been a longtime freedom fighter in the Show Me state. And he's going to join us in our Government at Work segment to talk about a ruling that came out of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals today that has to do with college students and mandatory drug testing. So that's coming up at past. Also on the show today, speaking of college students, we're going to talk about a story that I saw coming out of Amherst, Massachusetts, that reiterated that the University of Massachusetts Amherst will not allow legal marijuana, even if the rest of the state has legalized marijuana. So that gives us a look at the laws and the guidelines regarding our colleges and universities that receive federal funding. That's coming up in our Behind the Headlines segment right after the news. Also on the show, in Drug War Data Mining, a report out of Forbes magazine, how the marijuana industry has raised over $1 billion in 2016. And at the end of hour one, we'll have time for our radical rant, where I will get a chance to give you my airing of the grievances for this Festivus today.
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Yep, and we're going to tell you all about them. That's coming up at the end of the show. At least hour one. Stay tuned for hour two right after that, and we've got more marijuana news and culture for you, plus your live calls at 650-LEGAL-MJ. But we'll start everything off with the Cannabis Radio news, and in the headlines today, we've got a court ruling out of Arizona on medical marijuana patients and DUI, a ruling out of Michigan on medical marijuana patients transporting their medicine. Ireland has their first medical marijuana patient. We'll tell you who. Maine cities are trying to ban marijuana before it even gets to them. And one of the cornbread mafia was caught in Canada and is going to be extradited to the United States. That's all coming up right after this break.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Earn your PhD in THC monetization with CannabisRadio.com. Don't be late.
The cannabis industry is growing, business is booming, and as new opportunities arise in newly legalized states, each market is getting more competitive. Today, it takes more than just being a good grower. Do you have the resources to market and handle this ever-changing business landscape? Let Canna Management Corporation help you grow your canna business with our vast resources and experience to make your business a fully functional service company. Financial management, HR, sales, marketing, efficiency, and more. CMC has the experience and the expertise to improve your business and help you better meet the demands of your clients and customers. Call Canna Management Corporation and let our team get you ready to grow. 415-269-8015. That's 415-269-8015. Or visit canna-management.com.
Doc Rob, the concierge for better living.
Cannabis is just one of the many great plants that we have on this planet called Earth that we can use consciously and intelligently to improve our well-being.
Take a real, raw, inside look at healthier living while sharing great ideas and improvements for a better quality of life.
Learning to live and live well is a lifelong process. This is a journey. You could be 80 years old or 8 years old. You can still learn something that's going to make tomorrow a little bit healthier, a little bit easier, a little bit happier, a little bit better.
The concierge for better living with Doc Rob. Only on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show, where the truth about marijuana gets more than a minute to speak.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Friday, December 23rd, 2016. An Arizona court ruling says medical marijuana cardholders accused of driving under the influence have options for showing in court that there wasn't enough marijuana compound in their bodies to cause impairment. The Court of Appeals ruling Thursday vacates a man's conviction for driving while marijuana or a marijuana compound was in his body and says he was entitled to present evidence that he wasn't impaired. The ruling says defendants can do that through cross-examination of prosecution witnesses or by providing their own testimony and evidence on whether they were impaired. The ruling deals with implementation issues following a 2015 Arizona Supreme Court decision. It said cardholders don't have immunity in DUI cases but can try to show they didn't have enough marijuana compound in their systems to be impaired. Michigan's medical marijuana law trumps another law that restricts how users can transport pot in cars, the state appeals court said, reversing the misdemeanor conviction of a man in Clinton County. Local judges around the state have made similar rulings, but the 2-1 appeals court decision is significant because it now applies statewide. Callan Latz is a registered medicinal marijuana user. He was charged in 2014 with violating a law that requires medical pot to be stored in a case in the trunk of a vehicle or in a spot that's not easily accessible. The marijuana transportation law was signed in 2012, 4 years after voters approved marijuana for certain illnesses. That created the conflict. Latz is, quote, immune from punishment, end quote, if he's otherwise using medical marijuana properly, Judges Amy Ronayne Krause and Elizabeth Geiker wrote. A 3-year-old boy with a catastrophic form of epilepsy has become the first person in Ireland to be legally allowed to use marijuana for medicinal purposes. Tristan Ford from Dunmanway, Cork County, who suffers from Dravet syndrome, has lived in Colorado in the United States for over a year with his mother, Yvonne. She decided to relocate in order to administer the medicinal marijuana to her son in a bid to help reduce the number and severity of his seizures. Tristan has been seizure-free for over 3 months. Yvonne Cahalan, who applied to the Minister of Health, Simon Harris, for the license, said she was delighted it had been approved just days after they returned to Ireland. Towns and cities around Maine are taking a cautious approach to the new state law that legalizes marijuana and are considering moratoriums on the sale of the drug within their limits. Maine voters approved the referendum in November, and the Secretary of State's office signed off on the results Wednesday. But it could be months before the state completes the rulemaking process governing the legal cultivation and sale of marijuana. Meanwhile, the Maine Municipal Association is advising towns and cities to adopt moratoriums to prevent, quote, unwanted developments, end quote, with new marijuana business until the regulations, including local guidelines, are approved. Officials in more than 30 municipalities are at least considering local moratoriums and other measures that would ban pot sales. And at least 11 communities, including some of the state's largest cities, such as Portland, South Portland, and Bangor, have okayed 6-month moratoriums on marijuana-related businesses. Authorities say a man known as the Godfather of Grass has been arrested in Canada after 8 years on the run. The U.S. Marshals Service says authorities sought John Robert Johnny Boone after they seized 2,400 marijuana plants on his Kentucky farm. The agency said he was arrested Thursday when information led authorities to a small town outside of Montreal. Boone, who is about 73, spent more than a decade in federal prison after being convicted in the 1980s in what prosecutors called the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in American history. They said he had 29 farms in Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, and Wisconsin. The group became known as the Cornbread Mafia, and prosecutors said Boone was the leader. Boone is awaiting extradition to the United States. A Grand Junction, Colorado man has been sentenced to 10 months in jail for driving while high on marijuana and causing a fatal crash. The Daily Sentinel reports that 27-year-old Jesse Wayne McElroy was convicted of careless driving resulting in death and driving while ability impaired for the July 2015 crash that killed 60-year-old motorcyclist Gary Willis. McElroy has been ordered to serve 2 years of probation after his jail sentence. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Friday, December 23rd, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
Forwarding the cause of legalization and research of the growing cannabis industry, one podcast at a time. The Cannabis Radio Network.
Equio, New Frontier's cutting-edge big data platform, puts the information and answers you need right at your fingertips in real time to help you more effectively run your cannabis business. Go to www.equio.io to sign up for your free membership today. Again, that's www.equio.io. Run with New Frontier and let us help you conquer the wild.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com, the National Wildlife Refuge for Marijuana Unicorns.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, we want to talk a little bit about college, and in specific here, a note that we got from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst having to do with the legalization of marijuana. Of course, the state of Massachusetts has legalized marijuana, but that doesn't matter to the colleges and universities. Not only in Massachusetts, but the other 7 states in which marijuana has been legalized. According to the report in the Amherst Bulletin, an email was sent out by the University of Massachusetts Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Campus Life saying that weed is not allowed on campus. This went out Thursday afternoon, said federal laws, including the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act and the Drug-Free Workplace Act, require recipients of federal funds to prohibit marijuana use, possession, and cultivation. The email says, quote, "The use, possession, and cultivation of marijuana is therefore not allowed in any university housing or on any other university property," end quote. They will enforce rules prohibiting marijuana. Anyone found with it in any way will be subject to disciplinary action. They continue by saying, quote, "High-risk drinking, marijuana, and illegal drug use increase the risk of negative health consequences and undermine university goals for wellness and academic success," end quote. Now, of course, it only high-risk drinking, folks. Go ahead and just low-risk drinking is fine. But high-risk drinking and marijuana and illegal drug use, that's a problem, which in the construction of that sentence means that all marijuana and illegal drug use is high risk. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Massachusetts legalized the 21 and older adults who are going to college and have to live in university housing are not going to be allowed to have their rights. Now, I'm the kind of person who looks shit up. So when this email said that the federal laws require that they prohibit marijuana use, I looked it up. It's in the Drug-Free Schools and Community Act, and in the Appendix 2 of their Edgar Part 86 regulations, there's a compliance checklist, a Part 86 compliance checklist. So this is what your college or university has to do. They have to, number 1, maintain a copy of the drug prevention program. And annually, to each employee and each student, they have to give written materials that adequately describe and contain the following: standards of conduct that prohibit unlawful possession, use, or distribution of illegal drugs and alcohol on its property as part of its activities, description of the health risks, description of the legal sanctions under local, state, and federal law. So basically, that's telling me that if your school gets federal money, which almost all of them do, your school has to ban marijuana possession, even among its 21 and older adults, even in a state where it's legal. So that's the checklist there. Now, interestingly enough, as you look through this checklist, in their Appendix 3, they list what the federal trafficking penalties are. So this is a document that's under the website higheredcompliance.org. And so your college chancellors and such are reading this document. This is where they're getting their information. And when they get to the federal trafficking penalties, they've got cocaine, Schedule 2, cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, LSD, methamphetamine, PCP, and that you can get, 5 years, 10 years, and so forth. And then they got that kind of like cutoff graphic, like the paper was ripped. Like, we're not going to show you all of it. And then it says, for the most recent and complete federal trafficking penalties, visit the DEA. So you click that link and it's a dead link. It's dea.gov/agency/penalties.htm. It's a dead link. But you know me, I know my way around the Google. So I actually found the page that they're looking for, which is the federal trafficking page on the DEA. Interesting to note what they left out when they're providing this information to the college chancellors. They left out the part about marijuana on the trafficking and manufacturing penalties for marijuana, 1,000 kilograms or more, 100 to $9.99, 50 to $99, or less than 50 kilograms of marijuana. The federal penalty is not more than 5 years, fine not more than $250,000, $1 million fine if other than an individual. Second offense, 10 years, $500,000 fine, $2 million if other than an individual. That also applies to 10 kilograms or less of hashish and 1 kilogram or less of hash oil on a college campus can get those kinds of federal penalties.
And your mother was begging Barack to stop.
And what that tells us then is... that tells me is that they don't want to let these college people know, these college administrators know just how serious the federal penalties are for marijuana, because then they might start asking questions. Like, really? You want us to ruin a kid's life? Put $250,000 fine on him? Hell, that's what his student loan debt's going to be.
Next to THC and CBD, you can now add CBR to your cannabis vernacular. CBR as in CannabisRadio.com.
Seeking a career in cannabis? Ready to become the next great budtender? Increase your knowledge, skills, and higher ability with a Trichome certification today. Trichome Institute is the only cannabis education company in the world with courses that include textbooks, workbooks, an expert-approved and government-certified curriculum. Trichome now offers these courses online. Take the courses at your own pace with 24/7 live human support from anywhere in the world. These courses are perfect for physicians, pharmacists, MMJ parents or patients, adult use customers, and most of all, aspiring budtenders. The course includes full access to the cannabis industry's largest job board and even includes resume building help. Register for online courses with the cannabis industry's educational leader in science, education, and training. Visit TrichomeInstitute.com today.
I'm Radical Russ from the Russ Belville Show. Keith Stropp, the founder of NORML, is here.
The single most important victory will be California.
We've got Steve D'Angelo.
Well, the state of cannabis affairs in California is in flux.
The guru of ganja, Ed Rosenthal.
It's better for people to be using concentrates.
Weekdays live at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, exclusively on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show, providing dictionaries to drug czars since 2009.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Drug War Data Mines, we take a look at finance and capital in the marijuana industry, and this is brought to us by the magazine Forbes, online at Forbes.com, where they note a story that marijuana industry raises over $1 billion in 2016. This is according to Viridian Capital Advisors, and this $1 billion mark was just crossed in a deal that was made last week by Organic Gram Holdings Incorporated. They raised $40 million Canadian. That works out to about $30 million US. This is going to be for the build out and expansion of extract and derivative facilities. There's another 1 million Canadian private placement with Tetra Biopharma Inc. and some other tests going on. The Viridian founding partner, Scott Griper, says that the $1 billion was made mostly in North America And the Canadian market can show us what may happen here for the U.S. market, since there's a federally legal medical marijuana in Canada. I think we're just scratching the surface as to how much money is going to be raised in this market. But one big concern for many people in the marijuana sphere has to do with the election of Donald Trump and his appointment so far of what appears to be an all-star cabinet of drug warriors, from Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who famously said good people don't smoke marijuana and there need to be adults in Washington to express that marijuana is not a good thing, to the appointment of Health and Human Services Department to Tom Price, one of the opponents of marijuana in the House. That would oversee Medicare and Medicaid and FDA and NIDA. And just now we are receiving some word that Florida's Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who very famously stood against Florida's medical marijuana amendment the first time around when it was defeated with 58% of the vote, because you had to have 60. She has mostly been cited for her attempt to crack down on pill mills and prescription drugs, but is also a big opponent of marijuana. She wrote back in 2013, I think it was, quote, "The sponsor has obscured the most fundamental issue underlying its proposal, the nature and scope of marijuana use the amendment would allow. Any physician could approve marijuana for seemingly any reason to seemingly any person of any age, including those without any debilitating disease. So long as a physician held the opinion that the drug use would likely outweigh the risks, Florida would be powerless to stop it," end quote. This is, of course, counter to what we find in the data these days, that the states that have access to medical marijuana see a decrease in their opioid prescriptions, in their opiate overdoses, something you'd think an attorney general trying to crack down on pill mills would be for. But that is the latest. She's part of the Trump transition team, and she is now being floated as one of the names for the drug czar position. Not the worst pick out of Florida that I could make for the drug czar position, considering that's where Kevin Sabet is from. So maybe I should just count my blessings. But in the Forbes piece, they say that the investment community is really not shaken by the appointment of Trump or Sessions or any of the rest of these people. According to Greiper, he says investors aren't too worried about marijuana-hating Attorney General nominee Jeff Sessions, saying, quote, "We have not seen a slowdown in deal flow since Sessions' name came up, and we have not seen a slowdown in investing," end quote. And this is something that is surprising to me. I would think there would be a more hesitant wait-and-see sort of approach. But on the other hand, given that we are on the beginning of what's going to be a huge multi-billion dollar industry, people wanting to get out on the ground floor and become the next Bill Gates or the next Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg or Bezos of this big economy are willing to take that risk, are willing to put the money out there, even fearing that there will be a backlash from the incoming Trump administration. Now, we have yet to see whether there will be a backlash or not. Many people in my social media feeds counsel me on this, saying Trump is pro-business and marijuana is too popular and there's too much money at stake and the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Legalization's unstoppable. And I sure hope they're right. I hope these big money investors are right. I hope my friends with the optimistic outlook are correct as well. I can't help but think that the pendulum is bound to swing backwards. I can't help but think that as Donald Trump has made promises to go after immigrants and Muslims and others and is unable to actually follow through on those things due to practical and political realities, that he may want to turn to another scapegoat, may want to find another target for his ire and his followers' ire, another target to blame for the problems in the world. I am of the opinion that the pendulum can swing back and that it is swinging back. So let's hope that these investors with Forbes are much more, have better forecasting skills than I do. Obviously, they got more money. The billion-dollar industry, some of the biggest deals they mention, GW Pharmaceuticals. We've talked about them in the past, the British pharmaceutical giant. behind Sativex and Epidiolex and other cannabis-derived pharmaceuticals. I've always believed that is the final direction for medical marijuana. The concept of medical marijuana, the political tactic of medical marijuana just leads right to the bottom line of the pharmaceutical corporations. They'll be more than willing to turn that into a medicine they can make a profit from and then turn over the dirty plant-using potheads to law enforcement. Big deal with them. They did two $250 million fundraising bids in 2016. Stay tuned. When we come back, we've got Missouri civil rights attorney Dan Vietz on the line to talk about the drug testing decision for colleges out of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Keep your cannabis cravings under control. Feed your mind with CannabisRadio.com.
Oh, let the marijuana llama tell you something now about a game for your phone gonna make you say, wow! The game's about the game of growing cannabis for cash. Grow the seed, sell the bud, put the savings in the stash. Little by little, your empire grows large. Put the big celebrities inside your entourage. You can choose to play with Snoop or me or Cheech and Chong. Cypress Hill, Willie Nelson, Wiz Khalifa with a bong. The name of the game is Hemp Inc., that's the point. Download and play while you light yourself a joint. The business of cannabis should be no crime. Hemp Inc. is even hot-proofed by the man who run High Times. Oh yeah? Get it on Android and iOS today. Marijuana llama out. Got to tend to me own crops, you know. Money don't make itself. Hemp Inc.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details. Reforming America's marijuana prohibition laws takes education, lobbying, and voting. From Washington, D.C. to your state capital to your city hall, marijuana law reform involves all levels of civic life. Learn how you can make your impact with elected officials as we take a look at our government at work.
Today in the Government at Work segment, we are speaking with Dan Vietz. He's an attorney in Missouri, works with Show Me Cannabis, and is on the National NORML Legal Committee, as well as the National NORML Board. And Dan, do we have you on the line?
Yes, sir.
Oh, glad to hear.
Be with you, Russ.
Glad to hear from you as well. I got the note today about the decision out of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and it concerns a college there in your neck of the woods. Give our listeners a little bit of the background before we discuss what was appealed.
Sure. A couple of years ago, a small publicly funded, and that's an important point, it's a public, not a private institution, trade school, technical school, really a fairly sophisticated technical school, declared all of a sudden that because a lot of the employers who would be hiring their students would be drug testing them, they somehow thought they needed to begin drug testing them. And that was really the essence of their justification for this. And anybody who's followed this issue knows that that flies in the face of the precedents that the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts below it have said that students, college-age students, have the same rights as other adults do. And unlike high school students, who they certainly set a lower standard for, college-age students have never been allowed to be subjected to random drug testing by the government just to be a student. And that's what Lynn Tech was actually claiming they could do. And what was really frightening was that the panel, the original 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals panel that heard the appeal by the college when the trial court here in Jefferson City, Missouri said, no, you can't do that. They appealed, and the original 8th Circuit panel said you can. And frankly, it was one of the most poorly written and poorly reasoned decisions I've ever seen. And that's the opinion of other attorneys who read it. I mean, it was just appalling. And I am so happy to see that the court en banc, as they say in Latin, the whole court, all of the judges on the court, took the unusual move of accepting a review of their own panel's earlier decision and reversed their own panel. And so, of course, the original panel is still whining and dissenting, but the majority said what we all believed the law was to begin with, which is you can't randomly test college students at a public university just because they want to be a student at a tax-supported institution.
And this is in regard to...
so that's the essence of it.
And their reasoning being that, well, when they get out of school, they're going to be drug tested anyway. But is that really the case? Like every vocation they can study there?
No, you're right. Not at all. Not at all. Drug testing is far from universal. And from what I've read, a lot of companies have dropped it because it does not pay for itself. They find so few positive results. There are so few instances where it makes any difference that smart companies have stopped wasting their money on it. Now, what you and I know, and many people in the movement know, is that drug testing has absolutely nothing to do with either safety or productivity. And that's because, first off, the drug by far the most commonly detected is marijuana. It's by far the most commonly used prohibited substance, and it uniquely, its inactive byproducts can be detected for 30 days or more after its last use. So it's not showing the employer that the person tested is under the influence. It never shows that. It's not like a breath test for alcohol. So all it shows is, yeah, this guy might have smoked a joint a month ago. That doesn't prove the accident he had today had anything to do with marijuana. And that's how many companies do it. They'll drug test someone who's in an accident or other certain circumstances arise, and they inflict that test. But fewer and fewer companies are doing it because it just doesn't pay its way.
Now, this decision still leaves intact their ability to drug test for cause, though. Is that correct?
Yeah, and depending on, the devil's in the details, how you define for cause. What I believe, and I have not read every word of this decision, I've only skimmed it, but what they seem to be allowing, and not unexpectedly, is so-called safety-sensitive people in safety-sensitive programs to be drug tested. And the original district trial court, I think, frankly, I think we have a very good judge here, but she knew that the higher courts are going to allow the testing in programs, for instance, where you're running heavy machinery or you're wiring up electrical devices. So the court allowed some drug testing in those programs, but certainly not universal testing.
Now, the listeners in our live chat room are asking whether or not this is something that is or could be appealed, and if so, and it rose to the federal Supreme Court level, what does an incoming Trump justice mean to this decision?
Yes. That is exactly the right question, and that is exactly the question everyone involved and observing this case is asking. Because you're right, it's not necessarily the final word. And I know that the ACLU attorney in St. Louis, who is the lead counsel here, I want to give him full credit, ACLU of Missouri, and a great civil rights lawyer, Anthony Robert. He is very concerned also about what the U.S. Supreme Court might do. And, the lawyers for Lintech know what they're doing too, and they know that they might have a shot at getting review and at reversing this decision. But I doubt it. Frankly, for what my opinion's worth, perhaps very little, but I doubt it. I think that this principle is pretty well established now. The court started dealing with drug testing questions back in about 1986. And there were two cases simultaneously taken up, Skinner and Von Raab, and they dealt with Treasury employees who carry guns and engineers who run trains. And they said in those cases they were going to allow suspicion-less drug testing. But they drew a line and they said, we're not going to allow you to drug test everybody. Now, I litigated a case on behalf of Missouri Normal here 10 years ago. The Missouri federal court accepted a case in which we challenged the Missouri Department of Mental Health's declaration that they were going to randomly drug test every single employee. And we went to the same federal court, and the same federal judge that ruled in this case said, I'm going to have to let you do drug testing if people are engaged in certain high-risk activities. Passing out drugs, for instance, was one of them. If you're passing out big trays full of prescription drugs every day, she said, well, maybe those people can be tested. But I'm not sure that made any logical sense, but she recognized, again, frankly, I think that the Eighth Circuit was going to allow some testing to take place, but they did not allow the vast majority of Department of Mental Health employees to be tested without suspicion, without reason.
And that's a level that exists for even minors in public school, if I'm not mistaken. I know here in Oregon, the Vernonia case was one of them.
Yes, that's right. That is an important case on that issue. Court has a different standard. You go back to this famous Des Moines versus Tinker versus Des Moines school district case, was the one where the U.S. Supreme Court said back in about 1969 that students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate. Well, that sounds great, and that's been quoted in a lot of decisions since then, but the court has demonstrated precisely the opposite. As to grade school and high school students, they, by God, have ruled they do shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate, and they've allowed drug testing, for instance, of any high school student involved in any extracurricular activity, and not just football and baseball, but chess club and debate club, and even if you just want to park a car on campus, they have managed to persuade the courts that somehow justifies sacrificing a student's right to be free of unreasonable searches at the high school level, but not adults, not college students and other adults.
I recall a story I reported on, I think perhaps from Pennsylvania, where the parents were suing because their middle school daughter, age 11, was being drug tested to play viola in the orchestra.
Oh, God.
That's the kind of...
I hope they won.
That's the kind of stuff we're talking about here.
It is absurd.
Now, Dan, on this Missouri case, since it's an Eighth Circuit case, does that only apply to the states in that jurisdiction?
It is I think what they would call a direct binding precedent within this jurisdiction, which is 8 states in the upper Midwest. It's a big chunk of the country, but it's not necessarily a binding precedent in the other federal appellate court jurisdictions. But the U.S. Supreme Court is the next court above this one. That is the only higher court. That is the only further review that this decision could receive.
Is there indication from the other side that they're going to pursue that?
Not yet, but we'll know shortly. And I won't be surprised if they try, because they've invested a lot of money in litigating this silly case. I don't know whose money they're spending here. Probably the taxpayers, ultimately. But, they've invested a lot of money already in pushing for this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try to push it further.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eye on Missouri. Also, we're looking forward to developments for the next electoral cycle in maybe 30 seconds or so. Can you give us any forecasts, any ways people can help Missouri?
Yes, I can forecast that we will have medical marijuana and a good medical marijuana initiative on the ballot here in November of 2018. And anyone who'd like to learn more and help us and keep updated on this campaign should go to newapproachmissouri.org or newapproachmissouri.com and sign up there. By all means, make a donation if you can. Our end-of-the-year financial reports will reflect any donation made by December 31, and we need to show that we have strong support early in the campaign. We expect to start gathering signatures in January.
All right, looking forward to it. We'll keep our eye on it and give you all the help we can. Dan Viets with Missouri
Thanks,
Normal,
Russ.
Show Me Cannabis. Thank you so much. And stay tuned,
You're
folks.
welcome, sir. Merry Christmas.
The airing of the grievances is next.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
From dabs to chibas, sativas to indicas, we roll out a whole concentrate of fresh new content every week. It's like going from the greenhouse to the dispensary. CannabisRadio.com.
Mindful of sustainable practices and limiting their environmental footprint, Sansal hemp is always grown outdoors, as nature intended. By starting with uniform genetic profiles, Sansal ensures the plant will maintain its optimal performance and yield consistently throughout its life cycle. It is through innovative processes that Sansal is able to achieve pure whole hemp extracts and meet industry requirements and the level of quality desired by many of their customers. Healthy plants, healthy people. SansalCBD.com. Improve your lifestyle naturally.
This is the Stoner Jesus Show podcast on CannabisRadio.com. And don't try to debate me on something. Motherfucker, I can't do many things well, but words are my shit.
The Stoner Jesus Show, live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Or find the Stoner Jesus Show podcast on demand at CannabisRadio.com and StonerJesus.net.
Peace, bitches.
The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges. Hey, Mo!
The International Cannabis Business Conference comes to San Francisco, California on February 16th and 17th, 2017. The ICBC San Francisco, Northern California's first business-to-business event since the recent historic election, will bring together top state regulators and industry leaders to discuss permits, business models, and opportunities within the newly enacted laws and landscape. Of course, the ICBC also famously offers some of the best cannabis industry networking, leveraging our worldwide following to connect wholesalers, brands, distributors, investors, and strategic partners. And don't forget to come early for our VIP reception and stay late for our legendary after party. Join us for the longest continuously running cannabis business conference in California at the Hilton San Francisco, Union Square. The one and only International Cannabis Business Conference. Visit internationalcbc.com for tickets today.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant. All right, everybody, time for the Radical Rant. And given that today is December 23rd, that means it is Festivus.
The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
That's right. Being a person of reason, I do not subscribe to any of the mainstream religions. Thus, when this time of year rolls around, I'm celebrating a Festivus for the rest of us. And as is the tradition for Festivus, we begin today's celebration with the airing of the grievances. And thanks, Senator Rand Paul, for stealing my thunder. But while I'm excited as hell about legalization for 1/5 of the nation's populations, I still got a lot of problems with you people. Let's start with Maine's governor, Paul LePage. Where do you start with this guy? What a fully loaded bag of douche this guy is. You recall that he's the one that had this to say about his state's heroin epidemic.
And so some of the things that we have done. Number one, I got a bill into the legislature right now to take the traffickers. Now, the traffickers, these are people that take drugs. These are guys that are named D-Money, Smoothie, Shifty, these type of guys that come from Connecticut, New York. They come up here, they sell their heroin, then they go back home. Incidentally, half the time they impregnate a young white girl before they leave, which is a real sad thing, because then we have another issue that we got to deal with down the road. We're going to make them very severe felonies. Number one.
Yeah, D-Money, Shifty, Smoothie, coming up to impregnate the white women. That's Maine's governor, Paul LePage. And, of course, this ideological descendant of Harry J. Anslinger.
He now thinks that the voters of the Pine Tree State didn't know what they were doing when they legalized marijuana. Had no idea what they were doing. Clueless. Made a big, big mistake. Here's what he had to say during the campaign about legalizing marijuana.
Question 1 is not just bad for Maine, it can be deadly. Marijuana kills people on the highways. Traffic deaths in Colorado have increased dramatically. Marijuana is 3 times stronger than it was in the 1980s. People addicted to marijuana are 3 times more likely to be addicted to heroin. Heroin is already killing 7 Mainers a week. We do not need to legalize another drug that could lead to more deaths.
Yeah, that's
THC levels in marijuana.
Maine's Governor Paul LePage prior to question 1 being passed. And in a radio interview on Tuesday, this Republican governor from Maine explained that the federal government, quote, reissued their form for concealed weapons, and they make it very clear on the form in bold that it is illegal to possess and smoke marijuana, end quote. LePage says he needs legal advice before he can sign off on legalization because he swore an oath to uphold his state's and the federal constitution. He worries that approving state legalization will put him afoul of the federal constitution, leading to his impeachment. Never mind that when it comes to the voters approving initiatives, LePage says, quote, this is a recommendation to the legislature of what the people are feeling, you know. If you read the Constitution, the legislature can just ignore it, or they can modify it, or they can work with it, end quote. Let's see who else we got some problems with.
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Well, it's a bipartisan year for Festivus because I got a lot of problems with Democratic Assemblyman from Oakland, Rob Bonta, for his proposal to ban marijuana advertising from all roadside billboards in California. While California's Prop 64 banned billboard advertising of marijuana, it only did so on the interstate freeways that cross state lines. That was a nod to the federal Cole memo that insists that marijuana commerce remain in state. Well, that leaves tens of thousands of miles of California state highways and interstate loops that are wholly within the Golden State where marijuana may be advertised. But not if Bonta has his way. He said, quote, we feel that all highways, and not just ones which cross state lines, are inappropriate venues for cannabis advertising. He is saying this as he introduced the bill, which is coincidentally named Assembly Bill 64, continuing with, quote, particularly as Proposition 64 required an adult audience for advertisements other than billboards, end quote. Yes, we wouldn't want the marijuana billboards getting in the way of the innocent children's view of the Coors Light billboards, the Miller Lite billboards, the Dos Equis billboards, the Corona billboards, the Miller Genuine Draft billboards, the Budweiser billboards, the Bud Light billboards, the Miller Lite billboards, the Sky Vodka billboards, the Jack Daniels billboard. Should we continue here? Oh, and let's not even forget, we don't want to obstruct their view of the pharmaceutical billboards or the strip club billboards either, would we? No, we got to make sure that the children's pristine, young, innocent eyes are shielded from the marijuana billboards. That's it. You ever notice how these guys, all these Democratic, liberal, nanny state, justice warrior, save the planet people are wanting to pick so much on marijuana, but not so much on alcohol? Why is that? Gee, if we're really concerned about the kids seeing a legal adult drug being advertised on the roadside, why are we not going after the Coors Light Silver Bullet ads? Why are we allowing the University of California system to have its Pac-12 football teams directly associated with the marketing of Coors Light? Why is that not a problem? Oh yeah, because those are big industries that make big donations to assemblymen's re-election campaigns, aren't they?
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Another grievance for today on Festivus, the Oregon Health Authority. It's been a frustrating year for Oregon's marijuana retailers and producers. On the recreational side, Measure 91 passed in 2014 and provided that the Oregon Liquor Control Commission would regulate and manage the production, testing, and distribution of cannabis products. But on the medical side, the Oregon Health Authority, or OHA, handles those duties. And from the beginning, OHA has issued contradictory and shifting standards for cannabis commerce. They mandated extreme testing regulations before ensuring that enough testing labs statewide could meet those requirements. They set deadlines and then moved them. They made standards for packaging and labeling, and then they changed them. They issued and reissued differing testing standards. Man, I got to tell you, it's a strange flip of the script when the medical marijuana people are seeing the Liquor Commission as the competent cannabis regulatory agency compared to the health authority.
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Yes, and we leave the best for last. My biggest grievance of 2016 goes to Kevin P. Saunders. Now, there are so many of the stoners against legalization from the 2016 campaign that I could have chosen from. I could have gone with Sean Kiernan, the leader of that veterans organization who continues to insult and mock my 6 years of National Guard service, who approved of and laughed at and shared memes that demeaned in a sexist and frankly offensive manner myself and a nun. Could have been that guy, but no, didn't go with him. I could have gone with Letitia Pepper, that kooky attorney who invents this ludicrous legalese to frighten tokers into voting for their own continued criminality. You remember her, the lady who was fond of saying the N-word, saying that us cannabis consumers were treated that way, etc. That's a good candidate, I got to admit. I could have picked Dragonfly de la Luz, the pot princess who only shows up around election time to pen some viral anti-legalization piece online. But for sheer chutzpah, this time I had to go with Kevin P. Saunders, the erstwhile mayoral candidate in Marina, California, the owner of the Coaster Dam dispensary, and a lifetime Starbucks reject. That's right, folks, Starbucks banned Kevin P. Saunders from all its worldwide locations for life. What you got to do to get yourself banned from Starbucks from life? But there you go. So what had happened, why he raised my ire this year, going above and beyond the typical stoner against legalization, chutzpah, is it's bad enough that he's a medical marijuana profiteer who was trying to keep non-medical marijuana prisoners in cages as to maintain this medical monopoly and the price support that it maintains. But then Saunders was caught faking a quote from Bernie Sanders to make it appear that the Vermont senator opposed California's Prop 64, when in fact, Bernie Sanders had stated numerous times that he would vote for it. And when called out on this faked quote online, Saunders on Facebook dismissed the lie, writing, quote, "It's a wobbler at best," end quote. No, when you fake a quote from someone, that's not a wobbler, that's a lie. He also excused it by saying it was, quote, "political funny season," end quote, because it was, toward the end of the election, and so I guess it's okay to lie at that point. And then when prodded online, Saunders dropped the bombshell, writing, quote, "I get paid to win, and that's what I'm doing. The DAs, chiefs, and powers that be have put me out front and are paying well during the last push," end quote. A medical marijuana profiteer admitted he took money from law enforcement to lobby to keep healthy people in cages over their marijuana use. I believe it is now time for the Festivus feats of strength.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Happy Festivus! A Festivus for the rest of us.
All right.
Hey! Happy Festivus, everyone!
Happy Festivus to you too.
Happy Festivus, everyone!
And that's my airing of the grievances. You can find that in my High Times Radical Rant column today, hightimes.com. You'll find that. I think they've got it posted. Maybe it's not up yet, but we'll see. And of course, I don't make statements unless I've got links to them. You can find the links to all of these statements about the airing of the grievances in that piece. But that's all the time we got for Hour 1. Thanks for joining us here. Stay tuned. Hour 2 is coming up next. Toker Talk Radio, Phone lines are open at 650-LEGAL-MJ if you got something to say. We're going to talk about that Pam Bondi as drug czar possibility and also a look at the pot industry's energy appetite as we legalize more and more states. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com and Delta 9 Studios, I'm Radical Russ. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You grow it, you dry it, you